This is PanzerBlitz Situation 4. It's a long, thin board, and the advance is from the right to the left. This is a study and solo playthrough. An honest player can make this work because nothing is hidden. My objective is to find the optimum moves. The Soviets have a regiment of tanks, plus a regiment of motorized infantry. The Germans have a mobile combined arms battalion. Although German units are 2 to 3 times as good as the equivalent Soviet units, they simply cannot stand and fight. This force disparity is typical for the late war Eastern Front. So the Germans basically have 1, 2, 3, 5 tanks, tank-like things, and other things. Some infantry and some other things. Soviets had just scads of stuff, tanks, infantry, half-tracks, stuff. We start by looking at the victory conditions. The primary Soviet objective is to get onto the middle board, over here, and that should be easy enough. But that only gets them a draw. To win, they need to kill German units, and the Germans should be able to prevent that. But how do the Germans stop the flood of enemy units? The trick is that board 2 is only about 10 hexes wide, or less, and the Germans have 12 vehicles. This means that the Germans can keep the board physically blocked and have a couple of units available to shoot at any given time. Thus, if the Soviets just run forward stupidly, as some players do, and has happened historically, the Germans can grind them down. But if the Soviets advance too slowly, the Germans will win. We join the battle at the end of Soviet Move 1. This is the maximum advance. Some technical notes. The Su-85s lead. This one, this one. The T-34-85s. One there. One there. And others. They're distributed. Some infantry should be riding tanks, like here. Only one unit is exposed. It's this one. But it's a trap. The Germans can overrun it, which is good for 50% of a kill, but that needs a Panther, which would certainly die, and the Soviets will happily trade a couple third-rate units for a Panther. And important, the Soviets can already bring a lot of fire onto every hex east of row F. Let's zoom in a bit. And we'll operate at this zoom level. So all of this, we got a range 8, 8. So now we look at German move 1. And the German forces here. These guys aren't there yet. They indicate how far a truck could get and how far a tank could get. The Germans have 3 half-tracks plus 1 Panther. There's the Panther, and there's some half-tracks. Another one there, just sitting around. They're not there yet. Everything else is speed 8, and the trucks must stay near roads. So here's the first try. Half track comes on and heads for that patch of forest. Other half tracks go like that. Panther sits there. Trucks in various places. That hex, marked with an X, can't be reached by German units on turn 1. Hexes like this, and this, and anywhere here behind the Soviets are just dumb. Now, can this half track be trapped by driving around behind it with that unit? And the answer is not really, because the Germans can bring a lot of fire onto, I don't know, that hex. The half track can run. It's got lots of places, lots of ways it can get out. But the Panther could be trapped. So that guy comes back. This is how we trap the Panther. And you can't really shoot too many of those things, and so the Panther is stuck and gets killed. So put them back. We shift some units around. And you want to get some fire onto the north edge of the board, which is why the Nashorn goes here, to prevent the Soviets from running around there with complete impunity. And then we allocate passengers. And all of these are still loaded at this time, but I haven't put them underneath. And that ends German move 1. We move to Soviet turn 2. So removing markers. There's no great rush, no urgency to throw troops away. Advance under cover and threaten to trap German units. Drop an infantry up on the hill, threaten the nearest German tanks. And everybody just moves forward under cover. Trucks moving forwards in the back, getting onto roads and such. Now, that ends Soviet turn 2. Now, only 3 Soviet units could be attacked. This SMG at 1-1 + 1. And this guy at 1-1 from here. And this guy 3-1 from here, but the Soviets welcome the 50% chance of losing a second-rate tank against the almost certain kill on a first-rate German tank. The Su-152 threatens to disperse the Panther, so it has to run. And we move to German move 2. So the Nashorn and Jagdpanzer IV can't afford to stay because there's a 67% chance of almost certain death if this guy hits his close assault and they're stuck. Let's look at the next German line. These markers that I'm putting down show hexes the Soviets can't see. And that's 11 hexes, which needs all the German vehicles except the truck delivering the 88 to Opustoshinia. Actually, we might be able to reduce that by 1 or 2. You want to retain some units that will not be forced to move next turn so that they can sit and shoot. Okay, so let's execute that. The truck drops the gun and has lots of movement points available to run forward. And that's German move 2. We have a Wespe that can shoot, maybe. We have the 88 far to the left, might get a shot. And some other German units might get shots, maybe. Who knows? Obviously, a competent Soviet won't let that happen. So, Soviet move 3. So there's actually very few hexes where the Soviets can safely attack, and we avoid giving the Germans free shots. There we go. Hiding in the gully, dropping some infantry there to threaten the German line. Tanks in the gully. Sitting in the forest, hiding in the hills, and everybody just goes running forward. There it is. Now, the Germans get one shot at 1-1 here to there. It's the only thing they can see and shoot. I mean, they can see this, but trucks don't have any firepower. And a 1-1, who cares? So the Germans, they have to abandon Golod. And taking this shot is far less useful than redeploying the Vespa to a better position. And moving on to German move 3. So the Vespa redeployed, and things are moving back. The Germans can no longer hold a continuous line. Board 3 is far too open, and the Germans have far too few units, and anything standing in the open will simply be overrun. Maybe they can occupy clusters of forests and towns, but the chance of getting trapped is large. Note that the Germans can flee to the west board, and the Soviets can't really pursue them because they need to occupy the middle board. Now, this turn is a critical position. This is a major branch point. There are 3 branches, and they are complex, so they can't be evaluated without playing them through. Number 1, the Germans try to hold near Grabiosh for 1 more turn. This is the natural move. A, Soviets advance deliberately. This is the natural move. B, Soviets strike immediately, trying to annihilate the German force right here. And branch label 2, which is the 3rd branch, the Germans run for board 1 immediately. So I'm going to show branch 1 where the Germans concentrate near Grabiosh and occupy all the covered terrain like this. Now, the entire German force is going to be running next turn, and they're going to be approximately here, and then they're going to keep running, and for that 88 to get away, it has to load when the Germans get here and run with them, which means the truck has to arrive there now, which is why I put the truck there. So we've concentrated the German force near Grabiosh, left 1 truck here, kind of spare unit as a bit of a blocker on this road, and if it gets lost, well, it's only a truck. But the Soviets, if they try to approach this position, they might lose a lot of units, and that's the general idea. And I need to point out, the astute viewer will recognize an error in the move. This is corrected in branch 2. Otherwise, it can be corrected by shuffling some units around. It has no impact on the major results. All right, so that's the end of German move 3 in branch 1. And so branch 1A is where the Soviets do their basically normal move. Now, one weakness of the German position is that there are no units on elevated terrain. This means that the gullies are all hidden, and the Soviets just keep advancing without taking any risks. Oh, some tanks run in there, more tanks. Infantry advance, ready for close assaults. They could have gone further, but they would not be able to close assault. Close assault, you're limited to 1 hex per turn. So coming from here, they can get there. They can actually get to these hexes, but it doesn't help them at the match. Keep advancing, threatening that truck. And everybody else just keeps going forwards. Ends the Soviet move 4. It should, by now, be blindingly obvious that the Soviets will get their entire force onto board 3, which is here, without breaking a sweat, and the Germans will kill nothing and get 0 victory points. the Germans will get 0 victory points. Therefore, and when we look at German turn 4, because the Germans can get no victory points, it means they can't afford to give the Soviets any victory points. And so the Germans must run. No finesse, just run. The troops can get to Opustoshinia. Fortunately, the Soviet guns have short range, and overrunning units can't use road movement, so the Germans should be able to stay ahead of their pursuers. And let's show that. You do need to be careful with road movement, exactly who goes when. So that truck just goes, runs. This truck loads. Half-track gets there. Occupy the village. And so on and so forth. And that guy can't get to cover terrain, but can't be overrun because the nearest Soviet units would have to run over the top of this ridge, and that leaves them stuck around here. So, and these guys, they're too far away. So that's German turn 4. And we start Soviet turn 5. Running forward under cover to avoid giving the Germans free shots. Just running forward. So this is Soviet turn 5, and the main thing the Soviets must not do is stand in the open with their tanks. The Soviets have a huge force, but much of it is trucks and other weak units. If they throw away their tanks, their attack fails. So we're moving to German turn 5. And we keep running. And this truck is actually exposed to overrun from here. So we have to block that. And that's fine. Soviet turn 6, keep chasing. And that's it. So it's now German turn 6. It should now be blindingly obvious that the Germans will be able to escape into the dense terrain of Board 1 with their entire force. And the Soviets will never be able to trap any unit. Thus, neither side gets any victory points, and the situation is a draw. Bear in mind that the Soviets can only use 20 units in a free pursuit, but that's still substantially more than what the Germans have. All right, and so that pretty much ends branch 1B. There's no point in playing it out. The result is clear from here. So now what we do is we look at branch 1B and we rewind to the start of Soviet move 4. So I'll just load that file. And here we are. And so the Germans have just completed move 3. Now we look at the Soviet move. So upon closer examination, we see a real opportunity for the Soviets here. What happens if the Soviets hurl every available unit directly at the Germans right now? Shooting at tanks, the Germans can get 60 plus 40 plus 40 plus 32 plus 32 plus 20. Attack factors. That's about 5 kills. But the Soviets return fire with about 7 tanks plus a lot more stuff. Can the Germans kill 21 units in this fight? And the answer is in a pig's eye. Can the Soviets kill 15 German units? And the answer is easily. So that would be bad for the Germans. Now, people do all sorts of half-assed attacks. So far, in my PanzerBlitz videos, I have showed only deliberate, cautious attacks because they are good. Now I'll demonstrate an attack of the utmost brutality. All right, here we go. So the first tank just runs up from here to block the road. Su-85 comes in from the north. Su-152, the moving van, sits on the hill. And we start the surround, dropping all sorts of things. Anyway, there we go. So anyway, I've done a lot of movement, but this is not an ad hoc movement. We start by counting. The Soviets can get 7 of the big infantry companies into direct contact. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 are used. Seven of the big infantry companies into direct contact plus 2 recons. They can get all 12 of their tanks into direct contact. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This guy's hiding here. So, yeah. They can also bring some number of half-tracks, trucks, and small guns. So anti-tank guns sitting here. Stuff, more guns. And this is clearly an overwhelming force. And you can just look at the mini-map if there was one, and you would see finishing off the move here. So that's the end of Soviet Move 4. And let's look at that a little bit closer. So what I said was theoretically possible wasn't actually used because I've got a reserve force. Anyway, this should be enough to give the Germans a heart attack. Note that there are lots of Soviet tanks sitting on the road west of Gravyash. Live or dead, they block the road. And with the common Soviet AF-18s being substantially faster than the standard German ones, overruns become a serious threat when the roads are unavailable. Note also that the Soviet units are not stacked. If a Hummel shoots at one Soviet half-track in a hex, the half-track dies. Add in an Su-85 and it dies for free. Spread those units into 2 hexes, one of them survives. Also, the Soviets still have a substantial reserve force, which wasn't actually needed to do this massive surround. But it threatens next turn. So a deployed, if this infantry was deployed, it would not be available, but sitting here on this tank in reserve, half tracks carrying infantry in reserve, this tank in reserve, these units, these can be used to unload next turn and do another surround or whatever on wherever the Germans are next turn. So it's always a good idea to have a reserve force. And now we look at German Move 4. What can the Germans actually do? So clearly the Germans cannot fight here, as I already explained. They simply give the Soviets a decisive victory if they try to fight here. Lose the entire force and not kill enough. But nothing else works either. So fighting doesn't work. Nothing else works either. Let me show this. So best choice for the Germans is to use the Wespe to pick off this tank. Yeah, that tank. Use the 88 to pick off this tank. Now, note that 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. None of these are within half range of the 88, so that was a deliberate choice, so I didn't put anything there. So this one blocks the road and it can be picked off, but what the heck, it's a T-34-76. What do we care? So the 88 picks off this one, the Vespa picks off this one. And the Jagdpanzer is actually trapped, and so are these guys. So the Jagdpanzer can deal with that thing, which gives these guys the opportunity to run, but the Jagdpanzer will be killed. And the Vespil will be killed, and the 88 will be killed. So let's see what happens. So everybody else runs. German Move 4. Now, this is going to be difficult, so let's do it carefully, because the specific sequence in which the units move matters. So we pick off that guy. We pick off that guy. The Jagdpanzer, actually not yet. These things start running. He gets to there. That's easy. Now, I am using these markers to indicate the exact movement points available after clearing the block here. So that unit would have 4 movement points left after it gets to that point, and then it will start using the road again. So we carefully check all that. Right, and so now we move them in sequence so that the fastest ones are moved first, and don't block the slower ones. So that truck gets to there. That truck gets to there. It can't be stacked because of road movement. The Nashorn gets that far, or there. The Hummel gets that far. And now we do the overrun to clear the hex. Panther runs. Half-track runs. And the empty half-track also runs. So not very far away. Not very far away at all. And there's a truck here that basically is dead no matter what it does. So what the heck? It runs over there. Or there. And clearing markers ending German move 4. And Soviet move 5. We continue to... Actually, the Soviets haven't killed anything yet. But this is where they get their shots. Now, this move by the Germans is by no means a good move. It is merely something that would work if all Soviet units suddenly ran out of gas. And that truck, well, it can surrender, but it can't. So it dies. All right, so with move 5, we have a shot here. And the PanzerBlitz combat results table has a result that I find completely unacceptable. At maximum odds against a target in cover, there's a 1/6 chance of complete miss. And that is physically absurd and makes luck too important. Therefore, I use die roll 7 on 4-1 table to be dispersed, although in the actual game it is no effect. So we shoot the tank with him. Bam. 4-1. And guess what? We just rolled a 6. And yes, I know it's not a tank, but we're shooting a tank anyway. Shoot the truck. Bam. And now, crisscross applesauce. So this guy, 8 movement points, came from here. 8, 9, 10, dead. These guys, 9 and 10, that's 3-1 minus 2. Die roll 2, dead. This guy, nine movement points. He's dead. And that is five dead German units, which is a marginal Soviet victory. And we do the rest of the move. So that's Soviet move 5. Actually, there's supposed to be a spotter here. It's okay, I could move a truck in there or something. I'm not going to go back and change that. And so we remove the markers. And it's now the next move. So Soviet move 5 is completed. Soviet marginal victory achieved. Germans still don't have any victory points. So it's German move 5. So the Vespa, so let's actually think about this a little bit more. So that guy's going to die. That guy, the Vespa, it can hide for a bit, but it can no longer escape. It's too slow. The 88 isn't going to be able to get away because if it loads this turn and everybody else runs, it gets shot while it's loaded on a truck. So it may as well just blow up one more tank. And it picks something to shoot at, which hopefully is a T-34-85. Yeah, that one. It's gone. Everything else runs. If the Vespa shoots, that's its last shot, and it isn't really going to do anything useful. What? Blow up a mortar? Kind of pointless. So let's carry on. Moving things. German move 5. Vespa runs there. Best bet seems to be. Everything else runs as best they can. Note that none of the German units can be attacked next turn. Actually, we can end this now. It's a stable point. The Soviets have seized the terrain, which is the middle board. Both sides have lost a handful of units, except the Soviets can easily absorb their losses, and the Germans can't. Soviet losses are what? 4 tanks, something like that. Doesn't matter. So this is end of this branch. The result is clear. So now we're going to go to branch 2, where we rewind to the start of German move 3. So let's do this by loading the file. Here we go. And this is the beginning of German turn 3, where they do not try to stand here. We've seen that trying to defend near Grabyash this turn is just bad. So we have to run, and we use the fact that as long as we stay about 10 hexes ahead of the Soviets, we should be fine. So this marker shows the limit of where the German tanks can get this turn. All German tanks can get to here or further. And this is for the Hummel. And put down some more markers. So putting down these markers, these markers show the first attempt at setting up a line. So none of these hexes can be shot, but many are subject to overrun. So we have to redeploy them a little bit further away. And that seems to be a viable position. So these are all safe hexes, and no German unit will be delayed next turn. Note that one truck must link up with the 88 this turn to extract it in good order. This means that some of the tanks will be needed on the front line because that's 4, 5, 6, 7 markers. And those units, there's others that have to be elsewhere. One truck goes to link up with the 88. Whatever is available to run, runs. And these two units will not be used in this defensive position. And so the Soviets need to be careful because the Wespe and Nashorn can safely sit and shoot next turn, probably. And with their long range, they can kill 2 tanks, for free. And then the rest of the force just runs and sits here, and Germans are happy. So, on their next move, the Soviets could get let me just show that. One tank there, a couple here, and a couple here. And this one is an Su-85, not so easy to kill. That could cause a problem. And so we put this half track there instead to keep the road open. And now we're moving into Soviet move 4. They can't trap anything. They can stand in the open and get shot, but they can't actually trap anything, so they have to do another deliberate advance. As such, just push all these units forward. And that ends Soviet move 4. So the point is that with the German movement last turn, trying to get a partial surround on the German force doesn't seem to offer any dividends. So we just keep harassing the Germans. And now we move to German move 4. 88 loads. And we keep running. That marker indicates how far this tank can shoot. And that marker indicates how far it could do an overrun. So keep that in mind in moving the Germans. We'll occupy these positions. Running. And that ends the German move 4, and everybody is perfectly safe. So Soviet move 5, we just chase. Again, standing in the open with some tanks is pointless because, not pointless, it's bad. Because these guys don't have to move, so they could shoot. And they can kill 2 things, and that's the whole point of this type of delaying action. So the Soviets can only chase methodically. So it's the end of Soviet move 5. And German move 5, removing markers. So that guy gets that far. So the Germans can start to set up some serious firing positions, places from which they can shoot and don't need to move because they're in cover terrain. Now that truck could be overrun, so we have to prevent it, like so. That ends German move 5, and that ends the branch, and that ends the scenario, because the German force remains intact, 0 casualties. With proper play from both sides, which was demonstrated in this branch, neither side can collect any victory points. So the situation is a draw. Final result, a draw. And that is PanzerBlitz situation 4, delaying action against a mobile force.